everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing, the video broadcast series that features wonderful women from the shop floor all the way to the C-suite who are setting the new standards for manufacturing and engineering. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. I have Rebecca Pierce-Murray here with us today. She is the owner of Show Your Shine. And I'm really excited because we're going to be talking about how to be a confident presenter who's creative and compelling. Good morning, Rebecca. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Megan. I love that music in
Yeah,
your video. Excellent choice.
I try to keep it upbeat and energetic so that people get involved with the broadcast. But thank you for coming today. I like to start off each show with a brief introduction. So we first met at a virtual Women in Engineering event that Angela Thurman did on her birthday.
Yeah.
And the thing that really captivated me about that event is during it, you showed up in a Marilyn Monroe costume and you sang happy birthday to Angela. And not only did I get a great laugh out of that, I just thought it was so creative. And I talked about it for weeks after that because I was like, I cannot believe this lady came out in a Marilyn Monroe costume saying happy birthday. You sounded just like her from the video that they have of years ago with her at JFK's birthday. And I just was completely captivated by it. So I'm really excited to have you here. But who is Rebecca? How did you get started? And can you tell us a little bit about what Show Your Shine is?
Yes. Well, I would say I popped out of the womb as an entertainer. My mom has a picture of me at the age of 2, and on the back, this is when, back when I was born, you had to print off the pictures, right? You had to take them, get developed. So you have these little pictures, and then parents would write things on the back of them. So she wrote on the back, she sings, she dances, she plays the harmonica, and then claps for herself. And I'm a big fan of being your own best audience, because if you're enjoying yourself as a presenter, as a trainer, as an edutainer, as a manager, then chances are people around you are too. And when we are having fun, we are more easily able to learn and pick up concepts.
I think that's a great. We also have Angela too. She said that clip is on her website. So if you want to know what I'm talking about, go to her website and check it out. Because you'll smile, it'll make your day, and you'll just have a good day the rest of the day.
Well, and I will just say that it was Angela who actually inspired me just through a conversation that she and I had leading up to the event, where she was talking about diamonds. We were talking about C words, confidence being one, courage being one, and then Angela mentioned all of the C words, the 4 C's in diamond manufacturing. There's carats and clarity. I don't even know all of them. But then I was thinking diamonds are a girl's best friend. I'm a parody songwriter, so I rewrote the words to Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. The topic was on bragging, which has to do with self-confidence. So rewrote the words to that Marilyn song to bragging as a girl's best friend, performed the song, and then came back as Marilyn to wish Angela a very happy birthday.
So to get back to my initial question too, Showcase Your Shine. I love the name of it. So how did you come up with that name, and what do you mean specifically by someone's shine?
Yes. Oh, I love this question because I didn't come up with it. It was after a podcast or a training session that I did, I think on public speaking, on engagement plans specifically, one of the things that we'll talk about here today. And as everybody was leaving the meeting, one woman stayed on with me, Nan Hamilton. She said, you know what you really do, Rebecca? What's that, Nan? You help people showcase their shine. Showcase their shine. That's what you do. And bam! I said, Nan, I will give you all the credit for this, but do you mind if I take that as my company name from now on? So this was a couple years ago. And I went online, I grabbed the domain, and I'm like, that is me. That's what I do. You're right. You're absolutely right. And as a I've been coaching people for years in the capacity of a dog trainer for 12 years, where you have to build people's confidence in their communication with their pets, to as a videographer and a director, producer, same thing, photographer, same thing, to get a good headshot. You're giving people a boost of confidence. And then in using your voice to one-on-one in a one-on-one conversation, presenting to a boardroom, a team, an audience of 1,000, it's all the same, really. It's what you project. It's the presence that you project that people connect with.
I think that's all really good information, especially for anyone who wants to be a future leader. And I know one of the other things that you do, you're a course instructor at Western Washington University. So can you provide us some details on what it is that you help students with, and, what sort of changes you see in them when they first come into your class and then when they complete your course?
It is all about that transformation of self-confidence, really, when you boil it all down. So I have a course called the Triple E Presenter: How to Become Engaging, Effective, and Entertaining as a Presenter. And a lot of people don't think of themselves, they often struggle with that entertainment part, but truly being entertaining, like you're a storyteller, Meaghan, that is part of entertainment, learning the skills to become a good storyteller. And when you can tell a good story from the stage that helps people grasp a concept that you're trying to impart, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's entertainment.
Mm-hmm. And, we're talking a lot about confidence and creativity. And I want to get your personal insight on why you believe those two things are so important for great leaders, and, follow up with what are some of the main struggles that you see in the individuals that you work with in
Yeah.
terms of gaining that confidence and creativity.
Yeah, going back to the dog trainer, I can't help myself. But a confident leader allows people to dabble in their creativity, and there are no mistakes per se. There are no bad things that a person can do, no wrong things that a person can do. It's all about learning, and what thing that maybe didn't work out quite right but can take us in a new direction. So always being open. Part of that, I think, from a leader, being cool, confident, and compelling, is to create a safe space for people to create. And creativity is one of these things that a lot of things don't work out. You don't get what you expected a lot of the time, but sometimes when you get what you don't expect, it actually brings you it takes you in a new direction that gives you even something better than you expected, right? And so I think this supportive environment that leaders can allow people to quote unquote fail. I don't particularly latch on to that word. I just like create. If we can substitute the word fail with creativity, we see it in a whole different light.
That's interesting. I've heard the phrase fail forward a lot, and I've used that multiple times. And I tend to like that phrase over just using the word fail or making mistakes, because it's all about growth. And
Yes.
creativity can be interpreted in different ways by different individuals. So I think everything that you said is really important for great leaders. And I'm just kind of curious, what do you think makes a bad leader then? Is it because I know some bad leaders out there who may be too confident. So where do you differentiate a good leader and a bad leader?
Well, I think the leaders that we struggle with are not confident in themselves, and what we're picking up on is, in that lack of confidence, is their insecurity. the worst thing for, and going, again, I can't help myself, going back to my work with people and their pets, when the dogs were out of control, the pets in the household are out of control, it is a lack of leadership that causes that problem. Always, pure and simple. It's the person who wants to be everyone's best friend and can't do the hard thing, can't say it in a way, says it in a shaming way versus a supportive way. And that all comes from, I feel, a lack of confidence in themselves. When we can boost the confidence of our leaders, then they can create that safe space for us to grow in our confidence too. We're not threatened. They're not threatened by us. That's one thing that I personally have experienced in my life with other leaders that I've worked with. You can always get a sense if someone's threatened by your confidence. And what I try to do then is I see it for what it is, and I don't let it affect me. I keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to pull myself down to make space for somebody else who's insecure, but I certainly will help them step into my confidence if they'll come. I'll make room for
Yeah.
that. Absolutely.
I feel like that whole insecurity with someone else's confidence happens a lot within the manufacturing space. I've experienced it a few times, and you sort of have to like boost up their ego a little bit, kind of switch the conversation on
Yes.
what value they're providing everyone and let them know in a way where it's not so obvious that they're still part of the team and that you're there to help with the whole team. So I completely see instances within manufacturing where that's been an issue. I do want to bring up Will from Automate. He's great. Thank you, Will, for joining us. He said, yeah, I have a sticker that hangs on my computer that reminds me to always entertain, energize, and educate. And oh boy, do I love to tell stories. If you're not familiar with Will, he has a really great video series, and they're so educational. He's really purposeful on the content that he creates, and I always learn something from his videos, so be sure to follow him. And he has the same feeling that I do with your title, edutainer. So can you dive in a little bit more of that? Because I love wordplay, and I just think that's such a fun word. So why do you consider yourself an edutainer?
Yeah, an edutainer is somebody who thinks of themselves as an educator plus feeling that entertaining, providing some entertainment value to mix things up and help people remember things is important. So infusing those together to become the kind of person that can not only demonstrate how to engage, but also teach others how to do the same thing from the stage. And that's what I find to be enormously fun for me is when I work with a client and see their confidence rise, see them start engaging, having that engagement mindset when they're presenting. People remember things, they learn things, they feel things. That is the most important aspect, I think. When you can help someone feel something, they're more apt to remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a question from a LinkedIn user. I can't see who your name is. So sorry about that. But Rebecca, what are your thoughts? And I love this question because I'm an introvert for 100%. What are your thoughts on introverts as leaders? Thank you for your pet story.
You're welcome. To me, introvert, extrovert can all be good leaders. I tend to think more also in the realm of this spectrum that's transactional, relational, and in the middle we have transformational leaders. So once we can realize that it's all about connection with the one, not the everyone, but each individual, that connection, we've got a job to do. We have to be mindful of the bottom line, ROI, all those things. Making sure the processes happen, making sure they happen with specificity, and but it's that engagement piece that I think introverts especially are extremely good at engaging with the one. That's really that's where you shine. And when you,
Mhm.
I think what throws some introverts off track is like, wow, when I'm presenting to a crowd, that's a lot of ones out there.
Yeah.
That's 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 like a big old mass of ones, but really truly, you are speaking to the one. One of the things that I hear a lot of junior speakers or beginning speakers, emerging speakers say is they'll get up on the stage and they'll say, who here has, who here, those, like, is that even English? Who here, blah, blah, blah. And instead, do you replace the word who with you. Replace the word who with you. When you're speaking to you, like Mr. Rogers did, always the you, then there's only one other person in the room. And this mindset for an introvert works perfectly because you're absolutely comfortable with the one, aren't you, Meaghan?
I, yes, I definitely am. Um, we were talking before we went live, and I do a lot better on panel discussions because there's other people on the stage with me sharing the gaze of the audience. And I try to be funny. Sometimes I'm successful. If you ask my husband and my daughter, I fail miserably with the comical stuff, but I try to be funny to kind of steer the attention away from me a little bit because I feel like if I can make people laugh, then they're not going to notice me sweating sometimes or shaking a little bit. And I'm trying to work on those little ticks too that give my shyness away because I do have tics where like I'm either shaking my leg or I'm picking at my nails or something. It's just super. And my husband points them out to me because he's a police officer, so he pays attention to body language and people's small
Right.
tics. So anytime I do that, he points them out, and then I'm just like sinking in my chair even more. Like you're not supposed to notice these things.
Yes, and this is where feedback is the most powerful thing. Positive, supportive feedback. And when I think of a lot of us have post-traumatic stress syndrome when it comes to feedback. You know, you get the call from the manager that says, we need to talk, I need to talk to you, that kind of thing. You're like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? But as a person who does give a lot of feedback, I think of it more like a movie director. If a good director gives you feedback, that is gold because you're both on the same team. They want you to
Mhm.
shine. They want the movie to be a blockbuster, and whatever they tell you is for your own benefit. When it comes
Mhm.
to taking those things, it's very often to latch onto the negative and then believe that we are not worthy of anyone listening to what we have to say.
That's so true. And we have Valerie on here who says, go introverts. Thank you,
Yes.
Valerie. Um, And then we also have Patrick Dipple, who is from Variable. They're a really cool company that provides on-demand labor. I have an episode months ago with one of his coworkers, and I'll have to drop that link in the show notes later. But he wants to know, and this is probably a good segue into your stand-up engagement plan. But he wants
Yes.
to know, how do you organize your thoughts when laying out a speaking engagement? Is there a structure, flow, or process you lay out? So maybe this is a good time to introduce what your engagement plan is and how to go about creating that plan. Because I think that's one of my biggest questions as well too, because I feel like when you're speaking on your own in front of a big crowd, you should have a structure. And I think that's where I'm nervous because I've never really before had to organize a speaking presentation. Whereas with an article, I do that all the time. I lay out a draft, I have an outline. So I'm wondering if there's similarities in the way you lay out an article to a speaking presentation or if there's differences there.
Absolutely. Structure is everything, period. Without structure, you have a mess. And the first thing that you need to get clear on is, what is your compelling message? What do you want your audience to think, feel, or do after spending time with you? What do you want your audience to think, feel, or do after spending time with you, clearly in 10 words or less? Your compelling message. And that message drives everything else. It is infused in the structure. So then we have the out of the gate opening where you see a lot of, and this is what the five masterful tips handout that we'll give people at the end. I see a lot of emerging speakers come up and they're fumbling with the microphone, or they're saying thank you, thank you, thank you, or sorry, I'm having a bad hair day, whatever that is. Your audience does not care. What your audience cares about is, please engage me from your very first word. So you have your opening, you have your closing, and then you have your magical middle. So you have those three big parts, and they should all tie together with that message that's infused throughout. Now, in that middle, you can also break that up into three parts. It's the magic of threes. So, for example, Meaghan, in your upcoming presentation in August, is that right? In August?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you're a storyteller. So you might have 3 points that tie into your message and a story that helps support each of those points. Then you need a transition. So once you have this sort of lined out with the structure, then that's where the creativity comes in. For me, my brain can't rest until I see the structure clearly, until I know that my message is on point. And then you go exercising. So you do this far enough in advance of your speaking engagement that your brain has time to sleep on it, to mull it over. And then during a shower, during walking the dogs, during on the treadmill, you'll come up with these like, bam! These are like lightning in a bottle creativity, creative thoughts. Maybe it's a play on words. Maybe it's a certain phrase that you want to make sure to get in there. And grab a piece of paper or grab your phone and capture the lightning in the bottle, because guaranteed, if you don't capture it when it comes, it will be forgotten. So you put these all in a folder, write them down, jot them down, and then take another look at your structure when you have time and say, okay, where can I fit these little sprinkles, these sprinkles of inspiration in there? And then practicing aloud, practicing yourself, using Zoom to record it, play it back, watch yourself. And here's the thing about how the brain works in terms of memorizing. You will memorize much better, and I don't advocate memorizing word from word so that it sounds like something that you have written, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. We speak differently than we write, and your audience needs to know that you are absolutely present. An audience can sense like this if you're not present, and if you're not present, you don't come off as authentic, and mm-hmm. There's no connection. You've lost the connection right from the get-go. So moving, and especially in these transitions that we're talking about between the stories, having a physical gesture when you're tying your brain into your physical movement and your gestures, you're going to remember 200 times better. 200 times better by using your physical body. So maybe it's just moving from one side of the stage to the other. Maybe it's raising a hand. Maybe it's using 1, 2, 3 if you have 3 points that you're going to make. First point, second point, third point. Just little things like that. So now you have it. Now you're feeling comfortable. Your confidence is building. And this is where the engagement piece fits in. This is the very last thing. The very last thing. Having this engagement mindset dictates that you are there for your audience, and you go back to that message. What do you want them to think, feel, or do? The mm-hmm. engagement plan includes 3 things. It includes if you're on virtual, if it's a virtual or hybrid presentation, it's audio visual change up. So maybe you have some slides. I'm not a big slide heavy person. If I use a slide, it's basically just an image that supports the point, but very, very few slides. But audio visual, if you're online, maybe you have some music or something that somebody hears, a sound effect. So audio visual. Maybe it's a prop that you're bringing, or something that you're showing, a book that you have. It could be any number of things. Of course, for me, it's like I have a whole playground of props upstairs. So audio visual interaction. You need to have, I would say, at least 5 times. If you're, let's say you're doing a presentation that's 20 minutes, give or take, at least 5 times where you're asking your audience to do something with their own body. Nod your head if you think la la la. Raise your hand if you've ever blah blah blah. So giving them something physical to do will help them remember what you have to say. And then lastly, entertainment. Like you said, humor, bringing humor in, your stories, getting people to laugh, lean in and listen, all of these things. So it's audio visual, interactions, and entertainment. And what I do is I take a red pen, which I don't have right here, but I'll use red text, and I will go through my entire presentation, and I will circle or change the color of the text to red if it's an engagement. And then what I do is I just remember my engagement points. By that time, I know my presentation so well. If you remember one thing and one thing only, and it's just your points of engagement, that's what your audience is going to remember too, because audiences remember very little of what they hear. If you don't have engagement points in there, they'll remember 5% of what you say. Maybe they'll remember your message. Maybe they'll remember you. If you get them to interact with you, you have basically this exchange with them, then that goes up to maybe 35% if you're lucky. Just remember, just make sure to keep tapping back to your message throughout. So you mention your message throughout at least 3 times, plus the beginning and maybe at the end, and leave them with something that they will find unforgettable. So that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a year from now, somebody said, well, what did Meaghan talk about? Oh, yeah, it was this. She wanted us to do this. She wanted us to feel this. And that's because you made them feel it. They felt it.
I love all of those points. We have a couple comments. Gail, who's on here, she says, infusing the message. Yes. She's a great presenter. She has a TikTok channel, and I just love her energy and everything that you said about being entertaining and memorable. She hits all those points. I
She
love
does.
single thing that she does. She's hilarious. She brings smiles to everybody's faces. Will brought up, okay, we've got 412 slides in 25 minutes, so hold on, here we go. Definitely wakes people up.
That's a great bit of humor. I
Yes,
love that. A little bit of
I love that too.
sarcastic
Because
humor is great. Very
I
good.
cannot stand sitting in a room and people going over slide by slide by slide by slide, especially when it deals with technical information. And most of the people in the room have no idea what that person is talking about. Like, this is too technical for me. Please skip over that part. Like, it's super hilarious just to see people's faces go from like, oh, like this is where we're going with this. It's hilarious. And then we have Emily on. She's amazing. She's the owner of Marketing Metal. Um, she's like, I love that you're doing this interview as part of your prep for AME. Rebecca's points are going to be so helpful. So she was very nervous too. We're both presenting at the same
Oh,
manufacturing expo, and we were both like, oh my gosh, this is really nerve wracking. Like, what are we going to do? So when you approached me, I was like, yeah. And I told her about it. I was like, you got to pay attention to this. And then we have Patrick. Thank you. This is great. So there are a few things that you mentioned to include in your engagement plan. And then, you know, you don't want to include a bunch of slides because I feel like the entertainment then just loses the excitement. So what else should people avoid when they're making this engagement plan? What are the maybe top 2 other things, since we already said don't have all these slides? What are 2 other things that they should avoid?
Yeah, well, I would say one thing I didn't mention, and if you've ever tried stand-up comedy, I don't necessarily recommend it. I've done it a couple times, and it's just to see if I could do it. Okay, most people
Yeah.
did. You know, when the guy was heckling me from the back, maybe he was yelling more hummus. I'm not sure, but I realized I wasn't a stand-up comedian, but it certainly I learned a lot from the experience, right? And because you have people around you looking up at you from the stage, basically saying, hey, make me laugh, make me laugh. You know instantly, you have an instant feedback if you're connecting or if they're pulling away from you because you haven't established that connection. But one of the things I say, like stand-up comedy, we track laughs per minute, and with a presentation to think about engagements per minute. So when you take a look at your finished presentation, everything that you think you want to say, again, you're not going to memorize this. You're going to get to a point where you know it well enough and then let it go and trust yourself that you're bringing it. But again, if you can remember those points of engagement, and because you've tracked them, because you've written them in, and maybe in a 20-minute presentation, you have at least 10 points of engagement where you've done something different, you've changed something up. As a video editor, I think about video editing and how boring a video would be, especially a promotional video, if it's just one thing you're looking at the whole time. The brain needs those change ups, right? We need the change ups. We need vocal variety. We need somebody moving on the stage. We need somebody coming closer, maybe moving around, making us laugh. All of these are points of engagement. You identify all of those and make sure that you have like the layers of your cake built. Layers of the cake. And then again, if you forget something, just go to the next point of engagement, because your audience is not going to remember. The audience will not know what you've forgotten, so they won't care. But don't let it throw you off track.
So do you have a formula then? So, I mean, I've been involved with presentations that were 20 minutes, and then it seems like the max amount of time for one person to present is an hour. So do you have a formula like
Ooh, that's a long time.
how many points of engagement they should have included in their presentation for the time frame that they're presenting? Because I've sat through some hour-long keynotes and presentations where I wanted them to keep talking after the hour. They were
Wow.
they were so amazing. They were so amazing, and I don't know if it's because um I really don't know why. I think maybe it was a combination of the comedy that they had included, their personal experience that they were incorporating into it, and then some of the messaging on their slides was really engaging too. It wasn't your typical PowerPoint slide presentation. It was more like a Prezi type presentation that they were incorporating. And one of the other things you mentioned was they asked the audience for interaction throughout the entire presentation, which I
Yeah.
think is helpful too, instead of saying, hey, we have questions at the end. Well, if you have an hour-long presentation, you're going to probably forget what your question was by the
Right.
time the end comes around. So do you have a formula for that?
Well, and I think it's different also if you're in person on a stage versus virtual.
Yeah.
I think there are very few presenters that can hold an audience's attention for a full hour, unless it's a workshop, which is mostly what I tend to do in those longer formats, right? Where people actually are doing something. Now, back to that experience that you had with the person who spoke for an hour that was totally engaging. Do you remember the topic that they spoke on?
It was something about using social media
Okay.
to build up your network. And he was talking about, I think the reason why I related to him so much is because he was sharing an experience that he had with his kids. And he was just hilarious
Oh, I
about
love that.
using like TikTok and Snapchat And he was like, I swore I was never going to be on Snapchat. And then all of a sudden he's like, and now I have a Snapchat account and this is how many followers that I have. So it was really funny because he was just like, I'm never going to have this. And then, but then he incorporated it into this is how I get people involved with me and how I teach and inspire and I'm showing up where they're showing. So it was quite a few years ago, but I still remember it because it was just so hilarious. And he was using different types of images from his own personal account and then quoting books that he read. And it just wasn't this dull linear conversation. It had surprises and laughing moments. And then he had crying moments as well, too, which was really interesting to see the audience
Oh,
follow
yeah.
him throughout his journey. So that was cool.
Yes. The emotional roller coaster is probably a good reason why you remember that, because you were feeling what he was feeling in those poignant moments and those happy moments, and you become one with the presenter at that point. And that's a wonderful example also because it was a topic that you wanted to learn to benefit yourself. So he was demonstrating in an engaging manner, and you were learning like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to remember this because I want to try that sort of thing. He was helping you become a better marketer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to get to some of these comments too. So Will said, yes, Meaghan, every presenter needs to be way more basic in their content, even in a technical subject. Angela said, great interview. We have Ingor. Ingor, thanks for coming. She says, hello, ladies. I'm late, so we'll catch the replay. And then Will brought up something too. I think what is hard in many conferences, especially in manufacturing, is that many attendees want to consume but not participate. I've flopped at getting strong engagement, ideas for getting engineers into it. So I think he has a really good point. Especially with engineers, they can be a little standoffish in terms of being engaged and wanting to communicate. Like they just want to learn so that when they apply that thinking to their designs, that's that's what they want. But to have them engage and talk and share that information, it's really hard to get that out of most engineers.
Yes,
Not
yes.
all of them are like that, but most of them are. So, do you have some tips on how to get people wanting to engage and participate and not kind of be like shrug off and leave the room when you're talking?
Yes. Well, Will makes a good point. Know your audience. Rule number one for any presenter: know who you're talking to and what their mindset is. But I would bet that everyone loves a little bit of humor, a little bit of authentic humor. I was coaching somebody who was thrown into a keynote situation for a big government conference. 3 days before the conference, he calls and he's like, help! He is the, I forget what his position is. He's with the Washington State Gambling Commission. So he shows me what he's put together. I'm like, okay, we're going to throw this whole part out here. We're going to move that up there. And the first thing this is right before lunch, okay? Right before lunch. So all these pieces, this is a technical presentation too. But again, like, I forget, somebody said simplify. Simplify. Simple Simon. That's what people like. Don't assume they know acronyms. Know that they are a person. Know that you are the only thing, in his case, standing. He walks up there. This is what we did. He walks up and he says, listen, I'm very aware that I'm the only thing standing between you and your lunch. So let's get to it. And, he got a laugh. So we purposely crafted a lot of laughter. And of course, with a gambling commission, there definitely are things that I learned. And having an outsider who knows nothing about your business give you some coaching on this, we will uncover the humor for you. Basically, we will help you simplify it because we don't know anything and we're going to be confused by half of the things that you probably have in your presentation to begin with, right? So we are, find somebody who knows absolutely nothing to give you some feedback to help you see it from somebody else's point of view. So I absolutely agree. Know your audience, simplify, and infuse humor and stories. These are the two things. Stories is the one thing we can all agree on that our brains are born to receive. We are born to receive. This is what we want. This is what we connect with. This is what we grew up with. This is what we need to survive. So just focus on the stories, and maybe it's, you're not going to have people raise their hands or shout something back to you, but give them a good story. Help them feel something from you. Be authentic as you can. And people will be coming up to you afterwards, wanting your card, wanting to connect with you, guaranteed.
Now, with the whole COVID situation, we've all started to learn and become pretty good experts on virtual communication and platforms such as this one. And you did share a lot of do's and don'ts of presenting, but are there specific ones related to virtual presentations versus in-person presentations? Like what should they do for a virtual one and not do, and then same question for in-person presentation?
One of the big things, of course, is how we show up on screen. So having our lighting, having our audio, I call it mastering your virtual image, making sure there's not too many distracting things, or things that might give the wrong impression in your background. So that's a key to engage from the virtual stage, is to make sure your virtual image is dialed in completely. And then beyond that, again, going back to the engagement plan, even though we're talking to a camera, we can still elicit physical reactions. Either, I call it let your fingers do the talking. I will let my virtual audience know the lay of the land. So that's one thing. When you start your presentation, you're going to tell your audience, give them the roadmap. Give them the roadmap for the presentation, so they understand if there's going to be a Q&A, those sorts of things. So welcome, start out of the gate. Here's what we're going to cover today. Do the fun opening and then segue into here's how we're going to spend the next 20 minutes together. Then at the end, you tie it up with a bow and recap those important points that you want them to remember with your message, and then you leave them with something, a laugh, a hearty message. Something, again, to tie everything together with a nice bow. Same thing goes for virtual, although in virtual, again, talking to the camera, tell people how you wish to engage, how you wish for them to engage. I know some people say, I really would like you to turn your cameras on. Some people don't want to turn their cameras on. That
Yeah.
is absolutely fine. But you tell them how you would like them to engage, and then again, using that audio-visual interactions and the entertainment, and infuse those things throughout to make sure there's not a 10-minute gap where you're just like blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
You have to have that infusion throughout.
So we just passed our half hour mark, which is fine. But before I let you go, Rebecca, there's a couple more questions that I want to ask, and then you have some final thoughts that you want to share. But for anyone who's struggling with finding their shine, what would be your one big piece of advice for them to really conclude all of this? And if there's one thing they need to remember, maybe it's where they should start, maybe it's something they should do with themselves. What would your biggest piece of advice be for them?
In terms of becoming a better presenter?
Yeah, more confident or finding their shine.
More confident. Yeah. Find a place to practice. Find a place to get feedback, and supportive feedback, not feedback like, oh, I thought it was great, but somebody that you can count on for specific suggestions. Again, going back to that Hollywood film set with a great director who wants you to excel. They're going to give you specific things to do that the minute you hear those things, that's exactly what I needed. It's exactly what I needed, and that will build your confidence.
So for anyone who's looking for some coaching on how to be more confident and creative and compelling in their presentations, where should they go to get in touch with you if they have any questions about some of the things that you're providing? And then you did mention a workshop before we hit that live button. So if you can talk about that too and how people can sign up for that and engage with you after today's show.
Yes, I do have a handout. It's quite beautiful. I hired somebody to make it, so it wasn't me. It's called 5 Masterful Tips to Engage from the Stage. And these 5 things are really about having the engagement mindset and gets you through, say, the first opening sentence of engaging with an audience. A lot of people are very nervous. You feel the butterflies, and that can shut down your brain to the point where you forget what your first sentence even is. And in that forgetting, the anxiety builds, and that sets you up for a less than optimal experience with your audience. So this 5 tips, it's RebeccaPMurray.com, Rebecca P. Murray, MURRAY.com /5 tips, /5 tips. You'll get that download, and basically these things are designed to warm you up so you can calm yourself down before you engage.
Is it 5 is the number 5, or do you spell that out?
Yes, the number 5 tips.
I'm going to try to drop this in the comments and see if that shows up. If not, I'll send that out to you all as well.
And what I thought we could do is I would offer, what I was thinking, that anybody who was listening to our session today and who is interested in learning more, you can download the 5 tips, and then everybody who downloads it, you can have other people in your company download that. But I'm going to, once I see who signs up, hopefully there'll be at least 15 people, and then I'm going to put on a complimentary confidence session where we actually work through these 5 tips and then do some hot seat coaching on your future presentations.
That would be awesome. I might have to participate in that as well right before.
That would be awesome.
This presentation. Well, Rebecca, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today and building up my confidence a little bit. I think you are an amazing human being. You have such a great story. And for any of you who aren't familiar with Rebecca's work, I do highly suggest you go check her out on LinkedIn, follow her, connect with her, look at some of her past work. You will not be disappointed. You will actually walk away with a smile. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us today on Mavens of Manufacturing. And I hope you all have a great and safe weekend. Bye, everyone. This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family-run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high-quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.